Okay, Ira, you have the talking stick.
Okay. Good morning, all. This is Ira Zucker from NYSCAR, the New York City Long Island chapter. And remember, we've put this great program together for you. We'll have two people speaking. Membership in the Long Island State Commercial Association of Realtors is an investment in your career and your profession. The association gives members a key for successful sales through increased professional context, advanced continuing education courses, and much more, including legislative representation. This is some of the programs we put together. And I'm now going to turn it over to Paul, who's our MC. It's interesting, and I'll get this out right. Paul, last night, Billy and I were watching a Fred Astaire movie, and she suddenly just turned around and she said, "That's who Paul reminds me of, Fred Astaire. His mannerisms, his walking around." And then she suddenly turned around. She says, "As a matter of fact, he speaks the way Fred Astaire dances." So have at it, Paul.
Okay, guilty as charged. And a long, long time ago, I did win a Cousin Brucey dance contest. So indeed, I do the best I can with that stuff. So this morning's presentation is brought to you. Our primary sponsors are the Long Island Board of Realtors, the New York State Commercial Association of Realtors, and the Commercial Network of LIBOR, the Long Island Board of Realtors. We want to thank our co-sponsors, which is CCIM, the Certified Commercial Investment Members of the National Association of Realtors, the SIORs for New York Metro, and the Society of Industrial and Office Realtors, the Commercial and Industrial Broker Society of Long Island, and last but not least, the New York Real Estate Journal. So that being said, I want to introduce our first speaker. The state of New York has done some very interesting things, and they have changed the rules on us. After having been grandfathered for about 35 years, I find out that now I have to go back and take continuing education. So our speaker this morning to bring us up on New York State and the laws and what else is going on is Neil Garfinkel. Neil is a partner at Abrams Margolis, and he is also the counsel for the Real Estate Board of New York. So good morning, Neil. Please welcome Neil. Everybody, yay.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me, my firm is Abrams, Garfinkel, Margolis, Bergson. I'm also broker counsel to the Real Estate Board of New York, and I am the founder of something called the Toolbox for Real Estate Agent Success. And it's really an honor to be here to speak to you this morning. I want to also say that I've been a proud member of LIBOR and NYSCAR and the LIC, what was the old LICN, for probably close to 30 years. So thank you for having me this morning. Wanted to, as Paul alluded, just really wanted to give you a kind of a quick update and just remind you of a couple of things. And as I spend most of my time working with the real estate brokerage industry, there are a couple of things that continue to come up. And in particular, I want to remind everyone that there is no separate license for being a commercial real estate broker. It's a common misconception. However, there is no separate license for those of you who practice commercial real estate. And as a result of that, the laws and regulations which affect all licensees, such as agency, fair housing, and in particular corporate titles, are applicable to you as well. So this morning, the first thing I did want to address was the change in the continuing education requirements, and then just give a quick reminder about agency, fair housing, and corporate titles. So effective July 1st, 2021, there are new continuing education requirements, and it will affect all of you renewing your license after July 1st. In particular, the 22 and a half hours that you're required to take every 2 years remains the same. However, there is additional requirements, in particular, that there is now, you are required to take 2.5 hours of ethical business practices and an hour on recent legal matters, in addition to your required 3 hours of fair housing and 1 hour of the law of agency. So when you take your classes, again, anyone renewing after July 1st, you're going to need to have those 2 additional classes as part of your 22.5 hours. As Paul also alluded to, the grandfathering clause that had previously been in effect. So for those who had been licensed as real estate brokers continuously from 1993 onwards, did not have to take continuing education requirements. That is no longer going to be the case. So particularly for those of you who were grandfathered, and if your license renews any time before July 1st, 2021, you must renew before then, because if you try to renew after, you're going to be required to have those 22.5 hours. Okay, so just a reminder about agency, and in particular, New York rules and regulations, particularly 175.7 says that real estate brokers shall make it clear for which party he or she is acting. And the Department of State and just common principles suggest that that is the requirement that every licensee disclose their agency, how they're acting in connection with a transaction. Now, for those of you who do some residential, you know that there is the agency disclosure form that is specifically required in all 1 to 4 family transactions, including co-ops and condos. However, I do want to remind all of you, particularly the ones that are focusing on commercial, you always have an obligation to disclose, to be clear about who you are representing in a transaction. And in particular, with respect to dual agency, where you're acting as both parties' agents, it is unbelievably important. There have been more cases involving disputes over commissions where those commissions have been put in jeopardy as a result of the agent not disclosing their agency relationship, their dual agency relationship. So just a reminder, you always need to disclose the type of agent that you are, not only to the party you are representing, but to all parties. And we've done, and I've done lots of legal line questions about this, so here's just confirming that, and I'm happy to share these slides with you if anyone is interested. Now, the next provision, I think this is really, really important, is the idea that New York State fair housing laws and anti-discrimination laws cover commercial spaces. And so sometimes we are confused because the word fair housing is generally referred to, but it really, and more appropriately, should be described as anti-discrimination statutes. And in fact, all of the protected classes are protected as it relates to commercial spaces. So not only is it New York State, but it's also New York City. New York City also requires this. And in particular, I want to remind everyone that the form, the New York State Anti-Discrimination and Housing Disclosure Form, Fair Housing, it also applies to commercial transactions. So regardless of how small or large that commercial transaction is, you are required to give the anti-discrimination disclosure form. This went into effect in June 20th of 2020. So again, very important that you remember that regardless of how large or small your commercial transactions are, you are required to give this form. And finally, I just want to finish up with the issue of corporate titles. And in 2013, the Department of State issued 2 opinions specifically addressing the use of corporate titles by real estate salespersons and associate real estate brokers. And real estate salespersons and associate real estate brokers who work for a broker, that's the definition of associate real estate brokers, are deemed to be the same. And so The Department of State specifically confirmed and clarified that salespersons and associate real estate brokers are not permitted to use corporate titles. So titles such as vice president or managing director are only permitted to be used by the broker, the representative broker, the broker of record for the company. Now, there can be multiple brokers of record, and they are entitled to use those corporate titles. It is irrelevant whether the salesperson or associate broker is an employee or an independent contractor of the brokerage company. If you have a license, you're a salesperson or an associate broker, you are not permitted to use those titles. The Department of State specifically said that by using those titles, you are being dishonest and misleading. And I will tell you that that I also sit on the New York State Real Estate Board, and at many meetings over the last couple of years, the Department of State has continued to indicate that they are conducting audits. I believe that they've instituted at least $100,000 in fines with respect to that. And then just to finish up, the justification, the legal justification specifically resides in two statutes or sections. 175.22 prohibits the ownership of voting stock by real estate salespersons. And again, that's a salespersons and brokers. And then section 441B2 prescribes that a real estate salesperson's license shall not be issued to any officer of a licensed corporate real estate brokerage, a manager or member of a limited liability company, a member of a co-partnership, and so on. So when the Department of State looked at those statutes together, they said, they basically said, look, you can't do this, okay? You cannot do this. And so I just want to, again, remind everyone in particular, because I think that this is something that continues to occur, and you are certainly at risk of being fined there's suspension of license, and revocation of license is also something that is viable when it comes to violating the Department of State rules and regulations. So that's kind of my legal update today. Hope I didn't take too much time. If anyone has any questions, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me separately. And again, thank you so much for being here. It is always an honor to speak to these groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. And for all of the folks that have sent me something in the chat during this, the slides will be available. They will be up on the CN LIBOR site. Also, the slides from the following presentation will also be available.